Mock Draft Monday on HQ Spotlight. This week, we asked Josh Edwards to give us a mock, and he's got quarterbacks going 1-2. Cam Ward, 1 to the Giants. Shedeur Sanders, 2 to the Raiders. And you got to go down a few to find Travis Hunter going to the Carolina Panthers. The Jags there at 4. They have a couple of huge games coming up for this draft order. They have the Raiders next week. Then they have the Titans. So a lot of shifting around might be happening over these last 3 weeks of the season. We are joined in studio by Mike Renner. We also have Josh Edwards with us, along with Ryan Wilson, who we gave a week off from doing a mock draft this week. You're welcome, Ryan. That was all me. Let's start at the very top, because I've heard Ryan, I've heard Mike, and your talk about the 2 quarterbacks and why you might like Cam Ward a little bit better. Josh, how do you see those guys? Because we have seen mocks where Shedeur goes first and Ward goes second, but most of the time it is in this order that you're putting it.
Yeah, if this had been the beginning of the season, I would have said Sanders is QB1. As we've worked our way through the season, I think it's become more evident that Ward has been the better passer. Specifically in the second half of the season, I think he's throwing with touch. He's got great command of the offense. I think he's just playing at a higher level right now than Sanders. So if you're banking on a quarterback to be your franchise of the future, I think Sanders, or Ward rather, is a better bet. In today's NFL, you have to be a predominant pocket passer, and right now that's Ward. He's better suited to be a player that can drop back, attack all 3 levels of the field, and make a difference for your offense.
Yeah, we've talked about this week in and week out. And the thing is that this draft class, unlike previous draft classes, is going to be light at the top of the quarterbacks. But also, there's a hair's difference between Cam and Shedeur for me as we sit here. And I think a lot can change over the next 130 days or so. And I think that's going to be fun, because last year we were pretty much sold on Caleb. We tried to talk ourselves into Jane Daniels and tried to talk ourselves into Drake May. But at the end of the day, it was going to be Caleb going back to last summer. And I think this year, although the season's almost over, except for the bowl games for these 2 guys, I think the pre-draft process is going to have some teams with different opinions. And I would imagine if you polled 32 teams, you would get a pretty close to 50-50 split. I'm with Josh. I like Cam a little better, but we'll see what happens. I tend to fall in love when I get to the combine, Chris and Jordan. So we got time. I don't want to rush it yet. I'm not going to rush to the altar before I make my ultimate decision.
And I think the arm talent of Cam Ward, to me, is the deciding factor, especially if you're the New York Giants drafting 1, because you're an outdoor stadium playing in a division with multiple outdoor stadiums and multiple bad weather games likely on your schedule per year. That, to me, tips the scales just because of the places of the football field that Cam Ward can hit that Shedeur simply can't.
All right, I want to get to the 3rd pick in Josh's mock draft. Right now, Josh, you have Patriots selecting Arizona star wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. And this is very interesting. I'm really excited for you to explain yourself, because many have Colorado's Travis Hunter going ahead of McMillan in multiple drafts. But explain yourself on why you have McMillan the first receiver off the board here.
Well, first and foremost, it boils down to the Patriots needing to support their young quarterback, Drake May. Whether that's offensive line, wide receiver, you're welcome to discuss which may be the better fit. I think McMillan is a better wide receiver at this point. Travis Hunter is incredibly dynamic. I think he's better served to play cornerback at the next level. But that's something that's going to be interesting throughout this draft process, because if you follow the contracts, most of the money would tell you that it's better served to being a wide receiver right now. So if he mandates that he's going to be a wide receiver, I don't think it's unrealistic to think that some teams may favor McMillan as a pass catcher. So I'm giving Drake May a player that can attack the ball downfield and be a more reliable outlet than we've seen from, frankly, any of the Patriots pass catchers this season.
So I'm of 2 minds on this. 1, I love Tetairoa McMillan. He was my wide receiver 1 going back to the summer. 2, I don't know if we need another reason to have Deion Sanders get mad at CBS. So I think maybe Travis Hunter makes sense here. But I think I know exactly what Josh is talking about, because we've seen that offense in New England struggle with the lack of playmakers. And even going back to the last draft, I was suspect that passing on Ladd McConkey, which is what the Patriots did to trade down a few spots and get Jalen Polk, might come back to haunt them. If Travis Hunter's sitting there, though, he's the best player in this draft class after we've gotten through the football season. I would be hard-pressed to pass on him him. Number one, because as I mentioned, he's the best player. Number two, I don't want to look back in 2 or 3 or 4 years and go, oh my God, what did we do? And that's to take nothing away from Tedero McMillan, who is special. He's a more athletic version of Drake London. And if you like that, he certainly makes sense. But I think if Travis Hunter's sitting there, I'm going to be pretty happy to take him if I'm the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I've called Travis Hunter to the New England Patriots a dream fit in this year's draft, so I'm right there with you, Ryan. I will say, though, Tedero McMillan is a unique dude at the position. 6'5", his catch radius. Not everyone, not every wide receiver is going to have that. Quite frankly, there are no other wide receivers in this draft class that have it. So if you want to pair that type of wide receiver with Drake May, they don't come around every single year. Obviously, the need's there for the New England Patriots. It's very much a possibility, not that cut and dry that you have to go Travis Hunter here.
So not only does Josh have a wide receiver going ahead of Travis Hunter, he also has a cornerback going ahead of Travis Hunter in the Jags taking Michigan cornerback Will Johnson at number 4. Josh, why do you have him up there as well?
Yeah, we do one of these every week for the website, Chris. So I like to mix it up a little bit. Will Johnson Jr., quite frankly, looking back to the 2023 season, I think was a better cornerback. He was a calm, collected corner that reminded me a lot of Patrick Surtain II. When you look at this season, he has been dealing with injuries. I think that's lended some of his issues this year. You don't see him trusting his eyes, his technique quite as much as we had a year ago. So if you're going through this pre-draft process, 6'2", 200-pound cornerback, I think he's going to fare well in interviews. I think he's going to knock it out of the park in the pre-draft process. So I'm leaning heavily on that 2023 film and saying that he's my favorite cornerback, even if the margins are very slim there with Travis Hunter Jr., who is a very deserving player. And it would be a surprise if he was available any longer than where I have him in this mock draft.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it makes a ton of sense for all the reasons Josh laid out. I know Mike and I both had Will Johnson as our #1 player over the summer, and Josh may have too. And the point is, as Josh notes, in 2023, Will Johnson was special. He battled injuries, hasn't played much the last half of the season for Michigan, and in a season that certainly doesn't reflect what they did in that national championship run a year ago. But I think Pat Surtain is the comp that you're looking at, and if you get excited about a Pat Surtain and you need cornerbacks like the Jaguars do, I get it. I understand it. He's certainly a more physical corner than Travis Hunter, but I think the hype machine is going to be one in which Travis Hunter is going to have to be the first non-QB off the board, or there's going to be a lot of angry folks. Doesn't mean they're going to be right, but just something to prepare for because, I say it all the time. You have politics, religion, and mock drafts, and you can pick the order. That's what people get angriest about when you come up, have conversations at those dinner parties who like to frequent, Mike.
I will say, I don't think it's crazy to evaluate just at the corner position Will Johnson as the better player than Travis Hunter. Now, when you can play both sides of the football, that's what flips the calculus and why everyone's hyping him up the way they are. But Will Johnson, last year, Ohio State, Alabama, and Washington, end of the season, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, Jermaine Burton, Isaiah Bond, 5 catches, 93 yards, 2 interceptions in those 3 games to cap it out. Those are all NFL wide receivers. And that's what he did against them. You feel really good drafting a guy like that.
All right, so after 4 names off the board, we have finally gotten to Travis Hunter. Most mock drafts, Josh, have Travis Hunter in the top 5. Some even have him going #1 overall. You have him going 5th to the Carolina Panthers. What went into this decision?
Yeah, in full transparency, I've had him going #1. I've had him going #2. I've had him going just about everywhere to this point in the process. He's a fantastic player, like Mike alluded to. I mean, he is a fantastic cornerback, but you're throwing in the possibility that he could be in offensive packages for you at the next level, possibly do some returning as well. There's a lot of versatility in his game, and I think that's going to be very intriguing to a lot of teams. Again, back to the conversation of whether he's going to mandate playing wide receiver or cornerback. I think that's going to be interesting. But I think when you look at what he's accomplished over this past year, I'm not taking anything away from him. It's been remarkable. He's well deserving of the Heisman. We've never seen anything like what he has accomplished on the football field. And at the end of the day, in a draft with, I would say, fewer true first-round picks than the average draft class, I think Hunter is a name that you're going to feel comfortable taking and be excited about being the future of your franchise.
Yeah, Dan Morgan will be absolutely ecstatic if Travis Hunter is there, and so will Bryce Young. They hit a road bump last week, or yesterday, I should say, and Sunday, in terms of the way that they played. We saw a little resurgence from that offense, but they could always use a little bit more help. J.C. Horn's healthy. When he's healthy, he plays well, and I love the idea of Travis Hunter perhaps being opposite him. The offensive line has played pretty well in Carolina, so I think skill position or cornerback or maybe someone along the defensive line is what you're targeting. But I think all that goes out the window, guys, if Travis Hunter is sitting there, because inevitably he'll be atop probably all 32 teams' draft boards by the time we get to late April.
I'll just say this about the fit to the Carolina Panthers. If he's on the board there, I want him at wide receiver. I want him catching passes from Bryce Young. They're still throwing to UDFAs as like #1 targets in that offense. Travis Hunter would be an awesome fit for Bryce Young.
And I think minds would just be blown on draft night if
I
he's
think
still
so.
there at 5.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to see. All right, guys, hang tight. We are just getting started with Josh's mock draft. We just showed you the top 10 picks. But how about 11 through 20? Here's a peek. How about the Cowboys picking up Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty with the 14th pick, and the pair of Georgia Bulldogs boosting some defenses at 11 and 12 there. The guys will be with us on the other side after this to break it all down. Stay with us. Welcome back to CBS Sports. It's HQ Spotlight. You're looking at Josh Edwards' latest NFL mock draft for the 11th through 20th first-round picks. I know the Cowboys picking up Boise State star running back Ashton Jeanty with the 14th pick. Catches your eye. Michigan tight end star Colson Loveland projected to join the Chargers with the 19th pick. But what about the pair of Georgia Bulldogs who go 11th and 12th there? We begin there as we welcome you back to our set. I'm Jordan Giorgio alongside Chris Hassel and Mike Renner with us. Joining us from afar is Ryan Wilson and Josh Edwards. Let's begin with the Dolphins taking Georgia edge rusher Jalen Walker here. You know, we know there is a void at linebacker for the Dolphins, but you actually don't love this pick.
I don't love it because I think at the next level, if you're drafting him 11th overall, it's like when the Cowboys drafted Micah Parsons. You're drafting him to rush the passer, ultimately. And you're a team who just drafted a guy last year in Chop Robinson who's an undersized pass rush first guy. If you have two of them in the same fold, you're going to struggle on run defense. When you have two 240-ish pounders trying to get after the passer, you're just going to give up a lot in that scenario, and especially when you have to beat the Bills in your division, one of the best running teams in the NFL. It's like, I just worry about that and how he's going to fit into that defense. Not that he's not worthy of the number 11 overall pick, but just the fit for the Dolphins specifically.
Yeah, I understand Mike's concerns wholeheartedly. We've talked about whether he's a linebacker and an edge rusher at the next level. Yeah, run defense is not his specialty, but to me, he's a special talent. When you look at the players that are available in this draft class, again, I don't think there's a lot of true difference makers. So I look at Walker as one of those potential blue chip talents. They've gotten the most out of their defensive line this season, but I think when you have Bradley Chubb, you have Jalen Phillips, you have Chop Robinson, now you throw in Jalen Walker, you're able to bring pressure from anywhere. Yeah, you're going to have to figure out the run defense a little bit, but if Walker's going to be one of my tent poles for the future of this defense, then I'm comfortable building around him because I think he's that level of talent in this draft class, and there's a lot of concerns about the players that we're going to be talking about here soon that are drafted after him.
Let's jump down to 13, and the Bengals taking Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison. And Ryan, you know, the Bengals could use all the defensive help they can get. I mean, if they had any semblance of a defense, they'd be in the playoffs right now. This is an interesting spot for you. Usually someone else is picking apart your mock draft, but go ahead and pick apart Josh's here.
Yeah, Chris, I couldn't sleep last night. I was so excited about the opportunity to yell and scream at Josh about his pick here. Look, man, I understand the need for cornerback here, but I think the cornerback issue, the secondary issues in general have been solved clearly. They intercepted Will Levis 3 times yesterday. The Bengals did, so there's nothing to worry about there. But seriously, my bigger concern is this, and I was thinking about this while watching the game as well. Benjamin Morrison's coming off the hip injury, so I have a little concern there. Maybe he'll be fine. We'll find out. Siobhan Revel out of ECU is coming off the ACL. He's another top-flight cornerback. And I was thinking, you know what, maybe you get bigger up front. Trey Henderson asked for a trade last spring. He's not happy with where he is. He's got one more year left in his deal. So does Sam Hubbard. And I said, all right, you know, what about Nick Gordon or a Pierce there if you want to get some edge rush help and perhaps if you're moving on for some veterans there. Hendrickson's the most important part of that defense, no doubt about it. But if he's unhappy, you need to have some contingency plans there as well. I understand the need in the secondary, but I thought maybe if a Scorton is there out of Texas A&M, that might be an avenue you might go down as well.
100%. I think edge rusher is going to be a need for this franchise, even if Trey Hendrickson returns. We have not seen the potential that we had hoped from Myles Murphy to this point. I think what we do agree on is that you have to address the defensive side of the ball with this pick because, quite frankly, that's been the issue for them this season. Yeah, they battled injuries with Cam Taylor-Britt, Daxton Hill, but we just haven't seen enough consistency from their secondary to feel comfortable this season. And I think that has to be addressed, whether it's with a first-round pick or a free agent or a pick later in this draft. I think they're going to have to look to the secondary to fix some of those holes. And I chose to do it here with a player that's coming off a torn ACL, which is not unexpected here in the first round. There's probably 4 or 5 guys that could be in the first round conversation that are coming off significant injuries. And I think that's a testament to what kind of talent that we're looking at in this draft class.
All right, Josh, let's work our way down your draft board here. We land at 15. You have the 49ers taking Texas offensive tackle Kelvin Banks. Ryan, why are you a fan of this pick?
I love it. I love it. I love it, Jordan, because if Kelvin Banks is there in the middle of the first round and you're the San Francisco 49ers who need to upgrade the offensive line, that is the pick. And it's curious that Kelvin Banks is there because typically in the mock drafts over the last 2 or 3 months, we've seen Kelvin Banks as a top 5, top 10 pick, in part because there's not a very deep offensive line class here, and in part because he's the best offensive lineman, at least in my mind. The other thing is, though, when you look back at last year's draft class, 9 offensive linemen in round 1, Kelvin Banks is probably in the middle of that pack, maybe a little lower, the lower half of that pack. So, again, that goes back to Josh's point about the depth in this class. But I think he has first-round talent, and maybe he does not, in fact, go top 10, and he's hanging around in the middle of round 1. And I think that's a huge issue, number 1, for the 49ers to sort through because Trent Williams has struggled to stay healthy, and he's in his mid-30s now, and he feels a need. And I think Kelvin Banks is one of the best probably players in this draft class, let alone offensive linemen.
Go ahead, Chris.
I want to move on to
Shamar
Texas
Stewart.
A&M. Shamar Stewart, their defensive lineman, goes number 17 to the Arizona Cardinals. And Josh, I was reading the article that you put together. You know, you're really big on upside and the gifts that he has to bring. And Mike, I'm guessing that's one of the reasons why you really like this pick.
I like it also because of where the needs lie on this Arizona Cardinals defensive line and who they drafted last year. They drafted a similarly tooled guy last year in Darius Robinson, 6'5", 296 pounds. Shamar Stewart's 6'6", 290. I said you can't put 2 undersized guys on the field at the same time off the edge when I talked about the Dolphins. Well, you can put 2 jumbo defensive ends on the field at the same time in the NFL because one of those guys can kick inside, play 3-tech, 4-tech, 5-tech, and now all of a sudden you have this versatile defensive line that those 2 guys are out there. They can line up anywhere from wide 9 to 3-tech and still be impactful players. That's how I want to build my defensive line in today's NFL, especially one of them is as freaking athlete as Shamar Stewart is.
All right, you kind of sold me on that one. That's at 17. Let's work our way down to the 20th pick, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Josh, you have them taking Missouri receiver Luther Burden. I kind of like this. I actually like this because we know the Bucs are in need of another explosive talent on offense, especially with Chris Godwin set to hit free agency.
And with that gruesome ankle injury, it's like even if they do re-sign him, they could use a weapon in that offense. This is one of my favorite fits in the entire first round. Burden, so dynamic after the catch, 29 broken tackles on 61 receptions this past season. And we know anything about this Bucs offense, it's that screen game, the underneath passing. Liam Cohen, OC there, is dialing it up better than anyone else in the NFL. Add Luther Burden to it, they might put up 45 on the Chargers. I don't know. They'd be nasty.
How about another wide receiver going at 26 to the Steelers, Ryan? It's Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State and a guy to put opposite George Pickens. You like it?
I see your favorite pick, Mike Renner, and I raise you on Emeka Egbuka as my favorite pick. Emeka isn't quite as versatile or athletic as Luther Burden, I'll grant you that. But just watch yesterday's Eagles game and ask yourself, could Emeka Egbuka have been used by Russ Wilson in that offense, given that they managed 168 yards total? The answer is yes, and you hit on it, Chris. George Pickens is the number 1, and he has to get his emotions under control. But when he's on the field, he is virtually unstoppable. They need a number 2, and Emeka Egbuka, to me, screams number 2. It says it on the back of his jersey. He plays like a solid number 2 that you can rely on and perhaps pick up the slack should your number 1, in this case George Pickens, not be available because of a hammy injury.
All right, last pick in the upcoming NFL draft. Josh, you have the Chiefs taking Oregon offensive tackle Josh Connerly at 32. I know both of you guys absolutely dislike this pick, so Josh, I'll give you the first word here. Explain yourself.
Boo!
Sell it to us.
Yeah, you can't appease everybody. That's just the reality of mock drafts. I'm looking at a player with former 5-star pedigree, a player that is incredibly athletic. And then I look over to the Chiefs, who have battled left tackle issues all season long. Yeah, you've got Kingsley Suamataia, you've got Wanye Morris. They are battling. You bring in DJ Humphries. They have not been able to find a solution at the left tackle position. So, yeah, Connerly is probably projected a little bit higher here than we're accustomed to seeing in mock drafts. But I think he's an incredibly athletic player that could rise throughout the process. And if it allows the Chiefs to solidify the left tackle position, then it has to be an avenue that they consider here at the end of round 1.
Yeah, they keep drafting these left tackles, and they keep not working out. And to Josh's point, this is how athletic Connerly is. He lined up at quarterback and ran the option at one point for Oregon this year and scored on an extra point play. He lines up at wide receiver at times to block, so he can move. There's no doubt about it. I just think he's incredibly raw. And I'll just say this, and we heard Kyle Long talk about this today and Pushing the Pile with Mike. He thinks Joe Thuney's the best left tackle in that building in Kansas City. Well, move him out there and let's draft a guard in the later rounds, maybe a Wyatt Millum out of West Virginia. What do you think about that, Mike? Can I sell you on that? Yeah, I like that as an option more than drafting a guy who just turned 21 years old, who's only a junior coming out, who is very much a project because this is the kind of offensive lineman you draft like 3 years before you need him. That's when he's going to come good. That's who they've drafted the past couple years from Wanye Morris, Kingsley Suamataia. Just let them develop at this point or go sign someone in free agency. Don't make the same pick for the 3rd year in a row. It's going to not turn out well for him as a rookie if that is the case. All right, fellas, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Mock Draft Mondays here on CBS Sports HQ, and even giving Ryan Wilson a chance to react to somebody else's for once. We'll do more of that moving forward here on Mondays with the First Pick podcast with Ryan Wilson and Rick Spielman. They are doing mock drafts almost every week there on the show, but always talking NFL draft.